Welcome to our pod. And by that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now, we're blazing through the Poppy War, and we are covering the characters in the final book, The Burning God. But before we get into that, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I haven't really read anything else, but
I had a busy week.
Yeah. I watched Reboot.
I told Laura to watch Reboot,
Yeah,
guys.
I watched a couple things that Hannah recommended to me. So I watched Reboot. It was really funny, actually. I don't know why, but I feel like this is like the perfect mix of new humor with old humor, and they're totally showing that in some of like the hires that they make with the writers and everything on this show. I think it's really funny, actually, and I hope that they keep this show on for a while.
Reboot is a Hulu series original, and it's Rachel Bloom's new project. And if you guys know very little about Hannah and Laura, it's that we're huge Crazy Ex-Girlfriend fans.
I love Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
It's one of the best TV shows of all time. And so I immediately was like, Rachel Bloom has a new project, and like TikTok was pushing it on me. Everything was pushing it on me because it knew. And so I watched it like from the start, and oh my gosh, it is so good, guys. Like it's witty.
There's
it's funny.
4 episodes out right now.
Yes.
As at the time of this podcast. So
at the time of our recording, there are 4 episodes out, and there's definitely like a lot of new humor in it with like underlying like a huge premise is it's like they're trying to reboot an old sitcom. So you have like some of the old writers coming back on to help write, and like the difficulties of like generational divides and what you find funny in one versus what you find funny in another. I will say that like Keegan-Michael Key is in this, and
I love him.
I know, but I love that he is a man who always gets typecast as like neurotic man who's in love with the diva. Like, that is his typecast.
That's who he was on Parks and Rec. Like,
yes, it's who he was on Friends from College.
Yes,
it was who he was on Prom. Like that was a musical, and he was still just like neurotic man who loves a diva.
I mean, he does it so well. I love Keegan-Michael Key so much. Anything that he is in, he never really has like a major role in things usually, but I'm always like, I love him. He's so good.
I also love Steve-O's character. Like he's so funny for like what they asked of him. Oh, it's
Johnny Knoxville.
Knoxville. Oh my God, thank you. I confuse names all the time, but Johnny Knoxville.
Something else.
Love him on this. Like I think he's really funny.
He's someone that I think kind of gets put into a box of people think that he's just an idiot and can only play like stupid roles, but he's actually pretty talented. Like some of these people like this is where typecasting people kind of sucks, because people like him actually can do quite a bit of range in their acting, or have quite a bit of range in their acting, and they're not really given much of an opportunity. But I think he actually can do a lot, and he's never just really given a lot of roles. So maybe this is something that'll be kind of like a breakout role for him to get into more of like the comedy and TV type roles.
I hope so, because he was really good. And like, I'm actually looking at his Wikipedia, and he's surprisingly on a lot of stuff. I do remember one movie that does not hold up in
No. The Ringer.
But like, The Ringer, which is terrible in context. But like, I remember watching that a long time ago and enjoying him. And he was also on The Dukes of Hazzard. So like, he's been on a couple of things.
I wouldn't say he hasn't been anything. He's been in a lot of things, but I think that he's typically kind of playing the role of just like, I don't even know, the just like dumb idiot guy.
For sure. And on this he like plays a similar like man who did a lot of drugs and who was like a comedian and everything like that. So
but it's kind of more of like a self-aware person too, where he's like, I know I've screwed up and I'm trying to like not do these things anymore, but somehow I keep falling back into these traps. What's happening?
Where he finds out that reality television is scripted is so funny. Where he's like, I feel violated and I feel like I can't trust anyone.
Right.
I just love him so much in this role. Rachel Bloom is doing great things because I love her so much. But I just think
Rachel Bloom is just really funny too in her role. She has a smaller role than the other characters, but I think that she's funny too. And she doesn't really have that many funny parts or lines, but
Yeah.
she's just a really good actor. They
She's
have
so
really good
good.
cast in this. So
It's just very smart and very self-aware, and like I
and
love it so much.
there's someone, what's his name? He's from that Disney show that plays the kid.
Oh yeah,
grown
no,
up.
yeah, oh yes, he's there's like a quote unquote childhood actor who's now like in his 20s,
now an adult. He's very funny.
He's so funny. The episode where like he's going around with his exec and he's like, it's a movie set, nothing matters. And you're just like, this man is so like naive and like,
but I also love his interactions with Johnny Knoxville where he's like, oh, tough choice to decide between my mom and your job.
When he's like, you want to go get a burger with me? Shotgun. We're taking separate cars. Of course. Oh, it's just so cute. I love that show so much. Everyone go watch Reboot. It's a ton of fun.
It's really good. Yeah, I would highly recommend. And Hannah, I watched another one of your recs too.
What did you watch?
Revenge.
Oh, what did you think?
So I really got a ton of like John Tucker Must Die vibes from this, but better. Like,
yes,
and
so
this
much
is
better.
just I think because it's made in 2022 versus whenever John Tucker Must Die was made. But this was a really good movie. And I actually had a moment where I was like, oh, I didn't catch that twist there. So I appreciated that they did that.
Yes.
And that was a neat way to kind of twist the movie. So
wasn't Maya Hawke like excellent in that role?
She's always good. But I hope that she doesn't get, again with the typecasting, I hope that she doesn't get put into these roles similar to this where she's always kind of the queer person who is longing for someone and longing for something. So because she was that person on Stranger Things,
right,
and that was a smaller role when she kind of got her big break there, but I got a lot of vibes of that from
I do think unfortunately it was a very similar role, and I do want to see what else she can do.
I think she's very talented and she can do more. So and obviously, like you said previously, she's a nepotism baby. She's going to get more roles. I just hope that it's not always the same type of thing, that she will be able to kind of get. I can definitely see her doing some darker roles, some more like thrillers or mystery type things.
I think it'd be really interesting to see her in like, you're right, in like a horror film or something a little bit like darker. I think she would do really well. I very much enjoyed that movie. I'm glad you liked it, and I'm glad the twist got you too.
I also really like Camila Mendes in that too. She's very good. I mean, she's in Riverdale. She's Veronica in Riverdale, so obviously a lot of people know of her or at least recognize her.
Right.
But she's a good actress. I think she did a really good job in this movie.
She did. And she also said that this is her last high school role. Like she will not be going back to high school again. It's time. Yeah.
She looks too old. That was the other thing I was going to mention where I was like watching it and I'm like, she's kind of like right on the edge here in this where you're like, okay, I guess I can believe it, but she's getting too old.
She's getting too old. No,
she's got to be 30, I would say, or close to 30.
She had a couple of sex scenes where I was like, this is just an adult woman having a sex scene. She's 28 now, so that makes sense.
It's time to just have her in some rom-coms and stuff. She can do it. It's fine. She doesn't need to be a high schooler anymore.
Right. And she isn't even on
high school roles.
She isn't even on Riverdale as a high schooler anymore. Like she is an adult in Riverdale because I believe in the 3rd season there's a time jump. In one of the seasons they have a time jump where like they're adults now, so they're no longer in
appropriate.
High school.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know anything about Riverdale other than like what I see of people making fun of it online. But
I
surprisingly,
so long.
I have watched 2 episodes of Riverdale in my lifetime, but I know a surprising amount about Riverdale. So
I mean, I know like the general main cast, I guess, but I have not watched that show in so long that I don't think I could really tell you what's going on with it or anything.
There was recently a thing on like a game on Crooked Media's Pod Save America where they had like Gen Z versus millennials and they asked each other like different questions about like their lifetime, and someone was like, what's happened on Riverdale, and it listed a bunch of things and I was like, all of those things have happened on Riverdale. And the answer was all of those things, and it was like Archie fights a bear, Veronica sings
oh my gosh,
something outside of like Archie's juvenile detention center. Like,
Oh my gosh.
just a bunch of stuff that you're
bizarre.
like, it's just very serious. Like, I don't know. That show has gone off the rails so many times, and just Gen Z does not care. And that's their business. It's not my business. Enjoy what you enjoy.
Well, and the thing is, there's value in some of those shows that you can like sit down and be like, oh yeah, like totally weird things are happening on this now. I had been talking to my mom. I stopped over at her house the one day and she was watching a soap opera that has been on for years and years and years. And I don't remember which one it is, but I just was like sitting there with her while she was watching it, and all of a sudden like this guy's eyes changed and like they did this really bad like not claymation, but I don't know what kind of CGI it was. But it looked really bad. And I said, what is happening? And she goes, oh yeah, this guy, he is actually possessed by a demon. So occasionally, like when he gets outbursts, the demon will show through, and he has to learn how to change it because he's working through this or that with this person. And he was a pastor in the previous season, and now he's trying to do this or that. And he's married to the medical examiner. And it was just like the most convoluted explanation. Like she knew exactly what was going on with them.
Right.
But she has been watching this show for years, and it's just they've been on so long, the actors have been all the same people, and it's just they need to develop storylines and stuff, and people continue to watch this and continue to just be entranced with some of these strange things that are happening. It's entertaining.
Okay, is it Passions? I just have to ask.
I don't know, I'm not sure.
Okay, because I knew Passions was like a weird one where like randomly they would have like a witch on there who was trying to like mess with everyone's lives. I believe her name was Tabitha. Yes, it was Tabitha.
I'm not sure.
And they hired Josh Ryan Evans, who had a form of dwarfism, and he literally paid a doll come to life. Like that was a storyline in Passions that I remember from childhood.
Interesting. I don't really know anything about any of the soap operas. I just know that my mom watches them, and she had like one specifically that she watched, but this was like a thing like I think that she's been watching these or enjoying these since she was a kid, because like this was what her grandma and mom used to do. Like they would talk about like watching certain shows or whatever, and then my mom kind of got into watching this too. It's like a generational thing, but I've apparently broken that cycle where I do not.
Okay, well, apparently Passions ended in 2008, but I did grow up. So I actually know a surprising amount about
I think it's Days of Our Lives.
Soap operas. Days of Our Lives, that one tracks as well. I watched All My Children with my mom for years. And so from around the time Kendall got together with Ryan, and Kendall was with Zach, people who have watched All My Children, very few overlap in our podcast, but it was like a very specific amount of years. And I watched like every single day with my mom. She and I always watch All My Children together. We saved it to watch it together. And they're fun. Like it's all drama. And like the weird thing is you get weirdly invested in certain people's relationships that will not come up again if they don't like have them like the one true pairing. And sometimes they'll just like find one and they're like, yeah, those two are going to be together for the rest of their lives. And it's like, really? And my mom was also a huge fan of Young and the Restless, and she would like,
I think my mom watches that one.
The way my mom would just be like, Young and the Restless has some of the best actors. I don't know why they're doing daytime television still. They could win Emmys. And like, she was like she went hard for Young and the Restless, being like, this is the best television storylines. This is the best. So I also watched certain bits of Young and the Restless, although like the hard part about soap operas is like you have to keep the cast going because like as people age you need to bring in younger people, and so they do this thing called rapid aging in a lot of stuff. So like they age up children, so like a child could only have existed for about 8 years on the entire like thing. Like 8 years ago their mother was pregnant with them, but they're suddenly 16, so they do rapid aging a lot so that like the child will have like some kind of storyline that takes them away for a while. And then they'll come back as a 16-year-old. Yeah. And so like that's huge. And so you oftentimes get like inserted, like for me at a young age, I remember like going in on like certain characters who are around my age.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch them like get aged like into the more adult roles. And that's kind of how it like hooks you, because you're like watching people
Right.
your age and then you get to age with them, but then you still
Sure.
get to see like brand new storylines of these people because they like keep folding them into the story really quickly. And like there's also huge storylines about like people who get killed off in soap operas never really get killed off where you can see their bodies. Like it's actually a big deal if they're killed on screen and you like see them die.
Weird.
Because there should always be a chance to bring someone back, and you never know.
Well,
how
they do it
do
constantly.
Mhm.
I mean, there's always like, oh, he didn't really die. It was so. Yeah, and honestly, like you saying, Gen Z continues to watch the show. I think it's like for the same reasons, because it's like their version of soap opera. They like the drama, they like the mystery.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same level of darkness, where things are happening and they're strange, like Archie fighting a bear. Like, okay.
Yeah. And like I think it would be really easy to poo-poo daytime television because so many people do, and they make fun of like people watching it. And I think that is not okay, because it is really hard to do a soap opera. It is 5 days a week.
Like, I was going to say, they have to pump out content constantly.
And so like people who write for soap operas are constantly writing things.
Sure.
People who come on them have to learn lines like that day and learn scenes that day. And it is its own unique form of art that I think people do not appreciate enough. And there are like certain storylines that stick with me, including ones where they bring people back from the dead, like the doll. That one's for a different reason. That was because it was kind of weird. But like, there was like a storyline where one of the girls in Young and the Restless did die like on screen. So she was supposed to be dead, and they brought back like a separated twin, or like it wasn't a separated twin. It was like a child who's like 4 years older than her. Okay. But I forget, but like it was the same exact actor.
Sure.
And I also remember in All My Children where they decided to bring on, do you know the blonde detective from Law and Order SVU?
Oh, more recent one.
Yeah.
That just left.
Yes.
Yes.
Who has like a southern accent.
I can't remember her name, but
I can't remember her name
either. About.
But she came on All My Children, and she started saying that she was going to be like one of the mainstay romances was like between Dixie and this other guy. I can't remember his name right now. Tad. Okay. And Dixie and Tad were together for a long time, and then Dixie died. And they brought her on, and she said that she was Dixie. And like at first it was supposed to be like some kind of hustle, but then they take a DNA test and it matches, and you find out that she was actually like her half sister. And they thought it was going to be Dixie, but then they got the original actress to a degree to come back on the show. So then they like revamped the entire storyline, and it
worked for them.
It worked for them. Like, it's just like one of those things. And then they got two characters back. And then you had this whole thing. And then they were looking for their lost child. And they were doing all this stuff. So it was just like, it's crazy to see like how many different things. And like certain romance so convoluted with like certain romances I started with like fell off the face of the earth, and they're just like, oh, we used to be in love, but now I'm married to your brother and he's the love of my life. And it's like, really? Like, how does that work?
Okay.
So yeah,
I guess,
but sorry to go
I think
daytime
I did not know that you knew so much about soap operas, but I'm impressed.
I used to like, because my mom was the manager of a grocery store, so she would like read soap opera digest, and she like knew so much about like casting decisions. And she and I, because we watch All My Children together, would constantly talk about it. And I also like, if she was watching Young and the Restless, I would like do homework while she was watching Young and the Restless. So certain storylines,
because usually when my mom was watching it, I would be like, see ya. I would just leave, or she would just be like really nice and let me change the channel and watch something.
So the problem with Young and the Restless is it does have some of the best storylines and some of the worst people. So there were people that like I really hated all of like, oh my God, there's a couple on Young and the Restless called Victor and Nikki, and their children are Victoria and Nick. And the way I hated everyone but Nick and his wife from that family. And they always tried to like push Victoria storylines down your throat. And I was like, I don't care about Victoria. Get her off my screen. Right. So like, if you hate a character that they're pushing hard, it is really hard to watch because you're just watching them be dramatic and you're like, oh, I just don't like them.
Yeah.
All my children, at least, like always they didn't do good things for mental health, but it was very interesting. And they did do a ton of crossovers with Days of Our Lives because there was a baby stealing scandal on All My Children where someone who was like siblings with someone from Days of Our Lives took a child from one of the people on All My Children and gave it to their brother because he needed a baby for his wife. And then this other woman switched the babies and said like, so like each person got a different baby than their own. And then they had to fix it. Like it was very
like Good
strict.
Omens, but
pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Except different. So that was a huge All My Children storyline that I remember growing up with. Guys, daytime television is fascinating. And it's wild, but yeah, I know a lot about it. And you just got to
the funny thing is though, like you can like start talking about some of these storylines and I can be like, oh, that's like Good Omens, or that sounds like Pretty Little Liars with like the sister coming in or whatever that they thought. And those are like shows that are like kind of mainstream that a lot of people know of and would be like, oh yeah, it's totally fine to watch Good Omens, but they would like scoff at, oh, well, that sounds dumb if that's on a soap opera.
Right.
And it's like they're pretty much the same storyline, honestly. It's just one is marketed differently. So
exactly. And like soap operas, they're famous for or like people love them and watch them for a reason. So like if you start with one, you do get hooked, and it is like a daily dose of content that you can get. So people should appreciate them more, at least appreciate where they come from. So sorry guys who didn't care about listening to daytime television, but I'm sure Laura's mom loved Hannah's rant. By that. You learn something new about your friends every day.
I mean, Do Revenge is good.
Do Revenge is amazing.
What did you think of like the romance between Camila Mendes and Russ?
I honestly didn't care. Like it could have lifted right out and it didn't matter.
Exactly. And it was to the point where I was like, do we need this in here? And it doesn't seem like she even cares that much about this. I don't know. They had like okay chemistry in like one scene, and then like the scenes after that, I was just like, she is very uninterested in this relationship and is just kind of like, he's there. So I don't know.
I did find like, because I think a huge part of her character is you're supposed to be like, oh, I feel bad, but not terrible, because she could be an awful person as well.
Did bad things.
She did bad things as well. So I did wish they'd almost either like, I thought it was weird that a huge storyline is like she cared about him at the end of the day, because I was like, it was funnier when it's like she's just like faking as he like is in bed with her as she's texting other people. I'm like, I'm fine with that just being a joke. Like I don't think it needs to be anything.
Let's go.
Yeah, like okay, it's time to go. Let's go to a party. Like that is funny. And I think sometimes we're a little bit too afraid to like make women, you know, just have like casual relationships with men. And they wanted to make it something bigger than it was. And it just wasn't that.
I also think just because it was a teen movie, they tried a little too hard to have both of the characters have to have like a relationship play out at the end. And did we need that from both of them? Probably not. I mean, it seemed more natural for the other character. And I don't know that we really needed it from Camila Mendes' character.
It worked with like the storyline to have it from that one character, because it's like, introduced at the first day of school, you get the cute like you've changed. But I liked how they inverted that, where it wasn't like you're not the same girl I met, where it's like, it's okay, we're in high school, people do this. If this is what you're deciding to do, I support it.
Like,
and I
like the old you, but I like this you too. Like,
I actually really liked that, because it was almost like an understanding of like, well, high school people do this. They try new things on and they try to see if they like want to do
really
this.
Though, gave me like the John Tucker Most vibe dies, where I'm like, okay, the sibling of the person we're not supposed to like. Okay.
You like the other Tucker.
Yeah. Oh, funny. And also, I was getting a little nervous, like going towards the end of the movie, because I was like, is there going to be no resolution with this man that we all hate?
Like, Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen to him. Are you kidding me? But then luckily something did, but still doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
He was terrible. And also I know this is just a high school show thing, but the schools and the parties were so extravagant that I'm like, wow. They had a very different high school experience than any that I have ever seen. And also the weird like Coliseum type thing that they sit in kind of creeped me out. Like that gave me like dystopian novel vibes. But besides that, I really like the movie. So
I know.
You have to just look beyond all of the like ridiculousness of how fancy their high schools and homes and parties are when you're watching these type of things. But sometimes it's like, okay, wow, this is really extreme. Like these looked like practically like Emmy parties.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's supposed to show like the extravagance of wealth, and like so many times people I mean, I don't know any rich kids who were in my high school who would have had those parties, but I imagine somewhere they exist. So I don't know.
Maybe we just didn't go to school in California, and that's why we don't know. But
that's obviously why.
Yeah. Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So for watching, let's just say that like I went on a huge tangent about daytime television, and I watch Reboot. So those are my mainstays. But for reading, I recently finished the book Tripping Arcadia by Kit Mayquist. It is a Gothic novel. So it is about this like girl who recently dropped out of med school, and she comes back from like a holiday in Italy with her aunt, and her dad lost his job. He's like suddenly addicted to like painkillers. She doesn't really know what happened to him, and they don't want to talk about it, but her mom is suddenly like, you have to get a job. You have to do this. And so she becomes a physician's assistant for this rich family in Boston. And she finds out like they have these huge, like extravagant parties filled with like drugs and alcohol. And like part of her job is to make sure like people who are there to drink and like do drugs to excess, like don't die. And she kind of gets really turned off by it because her dad recently lost his job, and it's just like all this wasted wealth. And so she kind of like at one point tries to poison the family. And then like the novel just gets weirder and weirder. This is a romp of a novel that I enjoyed way more than I thought I was going to. Like, I think a lot of times when we read novels like this, they all go like a very specific way of like, she gets like way too involved, and she enters their world, and she wants to become a part of it. And like, there is some like mixing of emotions where she's like attracted to the daughter, and, you know, like starts liking, like hanging out with like the son who's supposed to be dying and all this stuff. But at the same time, she's like often just purely turned off by like what these people do and how they act, and like the wealth that's involved, and like the fact that she doesn't want to poison the family, but she tries to poison the dad to like make him suffer a little bit. And she's like, I decided I was going to poison him. And I was like, what? And then she like knows all this stuff because her aunt like studies poisons. And so she's like, doesn't want to kill him, but she wants him to suffer a little bit to like make him think about like, you know, what he does. And so it's just a really trippy novel. It took turns I wasn't like fully expecting. There are certain turns where I was like, yeah, this is definitely going to happen. But I purely enjoyed this novel. I thought for like a Gothic novel, it did well on like not having a lot of the tropes we see in a lot of these things. I'll say like Kit Mayquist is a trans like mask writer, so he is like coming from a very specific like outside looking in perspective in some ways that are very unique. And I very much enjoyed it. He writes really well, and it was a romp of a novel. Like I highly recommend it for like a little bit of a different vibe for October. But it's a quick read.
Continuing with like kind of the scary books.
Exactly. I'm trying to do a little bit of the spooky vibe. And then on the other side of things, Laura, I read The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa K. Adams, and this book was so cute. So it is a romance novel. It's a second chance romance. We start the beginning of the book with a man who he's a famous baseball player, and his wife like has just asked him for a divorce because they haven't been doing well. And all of his best friend shows up with these random guys who are like all part of like the Nashville like sports scene community, or like, you know, and he's like, do you want to make things work with your wife? And he's like, yeah, of course. I want her back. I love her so much. And he's like, okay, well, we have this book club where we all read romance novels to get healthier perspectives on our relationship. And we're going to let you in and help you save your marriage.
Oh,
and so he just starts reading. They give him a romance novel. They assign him one that they're like, this seems like on trend with what you're going through.
mm-hmm.
And he reads through it and he uses tips from it to try to woo his wife. And
I dig it.
This book is so freaking cute. Like, and a lot of it at the beginning, they're like, hey, we read these books because like women know what they want. They read all of these books. Like your wife definitely reads them. And then he's like, no, she doesn't. They're like, does she have an e-reader? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, then she
does.
and they're like, literally, they make this entire genre of books telling you exactly what women want. And we just have the sense enough to like learn from it and use these books to like help us become better husbands and partners. And it's just like, it's an entire book about a man learning how to communicate with his wife and like ask her what she wants and like talk through difficult conversations when they're both bad communicators and like learn how to open up to one another.
I like that.
It's so freaking cute. The way these men like emotionally support, and they're like, can you tell us what your problems were with your wife? And you do find out during the novel that she had been lying about orgasming after she had children. And he's like embarrassed by it and he can't share it with his friends. And they're like, look, if you can't talk about it to us, you're not going to be able to talk about it to her. So like, you need to start talking to someone. And they're like, but they're also like willing to tell him he's an idiot. And it's just like a bunch of men being like there for each other and emotionally supportive in ways. And like, they're all cute and not toxic. And she's amazing. And she like learns about a lot of her issues that she brought into their marriage and like learns to stick up for herself and become like a little bit more independent. And it's just so wonderful and heartwarming. Yeah. And I love them so much. Apparently it's an entire series. It's on Bookstagram, but like in each book, it's like a different member of the like book club. Yeah.
Love it.
And
who wrote these?
Lyssa K. Adams.
Okay.
So it's entirely too cute. There are some like reductive things, like every woman loves the craft store. And it's like, okay, but I'm willing to overlook it because not every woman, I'm not a crafter, but like there are things where she is an artist. So it does make sense when he's like, let's go to a craft store. You get to pick out whatever you want. And she's like, what? And like, it's very,
I mean, cute. I do know people that are like that, but
exactly. So there are just things. And I can't wait to read more of them because holy heck, I just enjoyed every single minute.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds good.
Highly recommend, Laura. You would love it.
Is it one that you could probably just kind of like jump into any book in the series?
I would say probably yes. I know that like certain characters you meet in the first book who are covered in the next couple of books. So if you want to like see them introduced, but I feel like this is a series where you could pick up any single one of them and be like, I'm going to start with this one and you're going to have a good time. So, because I know the first three love interests are this woman and then it's her sister and then it's the sister's best friend. And you do meet all three of these women in this book. But they are self-contained. Like it's not like this romance is going to be, you know, it is self-contained in and of itself. Right. So, yeah, it's just, and then there are like little scenes where they like pull out where the writer, it pulls out like the book within a book of it all. So she like writes passages of the book he's reading and he's learning from as he's talking.
I always love that when there's like a book inside of a book. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I think it's similar to like the way that people write books about bookshops or libraries or something like that. And everyone's just like, this is the best book ever. I'm like, is it? Or is it just a book about books and we all are obsessed with books?
I think that does not help.
But yeah, but I think that's the same thing that people kind of like gush over books where there's a book inside of it and you're like,
well, it's just like men reading romance novels. It's like, yeah, women do have romance for escapists. It's like some of the best books you and I love the most are romances where they have healthy communication, and some of our worst things are like when we're like, oh god, they just like didn't communicate. I don't know why they like each other. And like I just think that this book did a really good job of showing like healthy second chances at love and like how to fix it and learning from each other. So I loved it a lot. It was really cute. I actually pushed back the recording because I was like, I'm going to finish this book in like an hour. Can we wait?
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
But anyway, should we get rid of the romance and daytime
Talk about
television?
another
Talk about it all.
romance.
This is deep romance
It's
of.
time to talk about our favorite romance story.
But Rin,
The
I
Burning
like
God.
you. I may have stabbed you in the back, but it's not that big of a deal, Rin. Oh my gosh.
Ren, like, I'm just trying to like help you. You know, like we could have like run this country together. Like, you could have been the general. Like, I would have just like done all the smart stuff because I've had immense character growth
I'm
that we
just
saw
better than you.
off screen, but like we totally could have done this all together.
Rin's a monster. She's a murderer, a destroyer of worlds. Nothing
Also
but
a
blood and
goddess.
ashes ever trailed in her wake. Rin, what the fuck?
Also a goddess. The way that he just like casually throws in goddess, like what?
You know what I love? I love when men insult me and insult me and insult me, but then throw in a, but you're a goddess at the end of it. It makes it all feel better.
I mean, it washes all the other stuff away instantly, right?
I mean,
It
there's a
doesn't.
reason that Lizzie Bennett is horrified by Mr. Darcy's first proposal to her.
I mean, it's bad.
It's really bad. Did you think I would be swayed when you insulted my character, my family, and said you loved me against your own better judgment? Like,
It's so good.
such a good one.
Who should we start with?
I guess let's start with Katai because he literally has no emotional progression and his character does nothing. Like, what happened to his character?
His character left us in book 2.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. I even hate some of the reflections that Rin has in this book where she is like, oh, you know, I always just thought of him as the smart guy. I didn't realize that there was more to him. Also, why was he never considered as like a person to run the country or anything? They just immediately like, go do some accounting. He is much more capable than Rin, honestly. And the fact that they couldn't just be like, or that they were always just like, Rin's going to be leading the country. I was like, was this the best decision? Should Katai just do it? Rin previously never wanted to be the leader. Maybe she was just a liberator and Katai could have run the place and that would have made a lot more sense. But she never even considers that. And then she has all these moments where she's like, I didn't realize that Katai actually had feelings, or that he was a person, or that I was causing him pain, or that he was a fighter, that he actually went to school too. Interesting. These things probably bothered Katai. Like, did you not ever think about him once?
You're literally supposed to be tethered to him and understand him on a deep emotional level. And the way like that she either
is not a thing,
puts him on a pedestal or fails to realize he's a human is just because there are so many moments when she's like, you're brilliant. Katai is perfection. And it's like, this is
only when he does something to help her, like build
exactly
something for her to fight with.
And he literally has like nothing. Like, it's one of those things where I understand at the end that she kind of like tries to convince us that throughout this entire time, it's supposed to be Katai saying he can never say no to Rin, but Katai has said no to Rin. They have had a ton of conflict. And it's not like I just kept saying yes to you and yes to you and yes to you. And I failed to realize when I stopped saying no, it's like, I could never say no to anything you ever said. And it's like, what? That didn't happen.
That
what
was never
talking about?
Like book 2, the very beginning of it, all he did was just be like, you're terrible. I don't agree with anything you're doing.
Right. Like, how dare you?
Literally, when they became, literally, when they became anchor twins, his character went downhill so much. It
was really disappointing to read and just realize like, we're not going to get anything else from him. This is all we're going to get.
His character had so much potential, and I think that's why you and I are so disappointed, is it seeing the potential that the character had and seeing it kind of just like, I don't really know what to do there. So,
well, and it's just like, I thought
fizzled out
in this book. I always thought Katai was going to be the character who was going to let her down as like this person she trusted most. And then she found out that there was this end to it. And we just never had that resolution. No. And so it didn't make the end make sense at all. He didn't do anything in this novel but support Rin or like make something fly for 10.5 seconds. Like, I don't understand. why
He
that
was
scene
convenient
existed.
enough whenever they had any kind of like math or strategy situation, because we know that Rin can't handle those or figure those out. So then he was there conveniently to do that. Or he became an inventor because we just needed devices for Rin to be able to fight and make her able to make more sense why she was winning some of these things. But
And he just like in the second book, it was really interesting because we got to see like someone have become a full ally where he's like, I don't like to see what's happening in the South. I may not be a part of this community, but I want to make sure you guys are people. And I want to liberate, like, I want to be involved in the liberation of your people. Like he was so helpful in that sense. But like Katai outside of Rin doesn't exist in this book. And that's really unfortunate because like in the past books, there were things discussed like, hey, we just killed someone who you said you had feelings for. And he's like, that happened once upon a time. It's been so long ago, I can't even tell.
Or like the death of his father, you know?
And just like he was captured. He was like Neja's little therapist, and that was it. And it was just really disappointing. And
honestly, he wasn't really Neja's little therapist for that long. There was just a brief interaction just so we could do some plot dumping to give Rin some information.
I was really disappointed. I couldn't believe how little they used him. Yeah.
Really underused. I don't really care for how that character kind of fizzled out, and it had a lot of potential. So
yeah,
too bad. But what did you think of the trifecta? I think we can probably just talk about them as a whole.
Yeah, I really liked what they did with Daji in this section, or like in this third book. I do think that, like, there are weird inverses of Daji that I think like a lot of times I was really curious because often I felt like I couldn't tell if Rin was supposed to be like Daji incarnate or if she was supposed to be Zhang. Because I do think like Neja is supposed to be the Dragon Emperor, whatever. They're pretty much one-to-one.
I think that they're supposed to be representative of Katai.
Yes.
Rin and Neja.
Yes. But I can never tell if like Katai was supposed to be Daji or if Rin was supposed to be Daji, because there were moments of those two being each of those characters. You know, there's moments of Katai trying to be Zhang, who he sees like what everything is, and he's willing to like just do what needs to be done. But there are
also
moments
having like the sense to be like, no, we shouldn't do this. Like, no, we have to stop.
Yes. And like Rin is the person who is like really reactive, like Dashi is oftentimes, where Dashi will just do stuff and be like, I don't know why I did that. I just did it because it seemed right at the time, and I decided to deal with it afterwards, and it hurt me, but that's just what you have to do sometimes.
Right.
And so like there are moments of that, but I also see where like Katai is like Dashi, where he's the mediator between the two people, where he's always trying to like see the good in both of them, even if there is no more good to see. And so I thought that was the most compelling part of Dashi, is like how she reflected Katai and Rin back at them, and like had this very complicated mishmash of things with the two of them.
I do think it's tricky though with Dashi. Like, that was a very positive look at her, but I think it's tricky to always take a positive view of her. It's really hard with this character to like put her in a box and be like, this is what she's like, maybe these two aspects of her, because some of what we got previously, you know, like really contradicts that. And I guess as we go to learn about her more, we learn that she obviously has multitudes, but it's hard for me to necessarily be like, oh yeah, she's just like Rin or she's just like Katai. And I think that there's still, and this may just be the way that this book with the trifecta like was so rushed, but I think there's still some things like we don't know about that character and her motivations, and I still get vibes of like there's something more sinister going on, or possibly that, you know, that we don't know what was the situation between her and the Emperor. So it's tricky for me to be like, oh yeah, Rin's just like Sudaji, when I'm just like, I don't know. I
think that's very fair.
Too much unknown about this character.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly fair. I don't think you're wrong. And I do think that like Daji is one of the more complicated characters, because there are so many like underlying things of she sometimes is incredibly like classist and awful. And like, I only trust people if they have use to me. Oh, we have to go get Zhang. Oh, we have to do this. But it is interesting because we often only see Sudashi through Rin's lens. And I think Rin has a lot of animosity towards Sudashi in a way that's like very unique.
But at the same time, idolizes her. It's interesting. The way that she reacts to authority figures is baffling. But
yeah, I mean, it's Rin thinks only from moment to moment. That is her biggest flaw.
And I think one thing too with her going with the authority figures, I get the vibe from her so much where it's just like somebody's in charge, they're great. It's like
someone's taking.
Don't immediately think that.
Someone's taking all the things off of me and I don't have to decide anything. Okay, I'm done.
Wonderful.
Perfect. That's all I ever wanted. I just wanted people to make the decision for me. Okay.
Nothing to say about the Dragon Emperor. Like,
well, blink and you miss him.
He was there. He's gone. What was the point? There was none. Just need to wrap that up in case somebody was like, they didn't
what happened to them?
Tell us what happened to them. It was left unknown. Should have left it unknown.
He was just so like evil. It was to the point of like ridiculousness. Like he just came out swinging, and he was just the most evil incarnate person ever. Like with the other trifecta,
no
like there
reason,
right? Like there wasn't enough said about like why they kept him in an eternal slumber. Like it just kind of felt like Sudashi like put the seal on them, and then she was like immediately like put him to sleep. Like, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, and you didn't know like what just happened. Did we like? I don't know, because you're given kind of the lead up to what happened at Spear, but you're not really seeing. I mean, you're getting Sudashi's point of view, I guess, but you're not really seeing her be like, this is the final straw. This is what I have to do to put him out of, I don't know, out of our lives
range. Like, yeah, it just made very little sense. I don't understand it, but yeah, that's. And then Zhang, I like certain elements of him where it's like, I liked that there was a lot of discussion of like, I'm not the same person. You can't like, I am me. And that person is more complicated now. And Zhang
is another interesting character similar to Daji, where it's like, we don't know enough about him. And we were starting to get more with him than we were with Daji, where it was like, because we had more to work off of because what we knew some things previously from the other books. But in this one, it is interesting, Hannah, when you're like saying, okay, well, I'm not the same person. I've had these things happen to me. The person you knew wasn't really me. But then the way that it's kind of like rushed through and we don't get explanations of what he actually is like. And then when we do get the supposed this is really me, and it doesn't make sense, I guess, in the situations that they're in, it's confusing.
Yeah. I just didn't love it. And like, I felt like there was so much potential with the trifecta, and they just kind of fell flat overall. Like there was just nothing to them. Like I said, like I loved when Daji and Zhang are just like two ragtag people just being like, sure, let's riff on one another. Like we're finally back together. This is so
there was
fun.
Definitely some levity, and it was almost like a quest type situation when we get the gang back together, and we're gonna work together to go, wake up the Dragon Emperor and everything. And so that was kind of cool. And you get to see Zhang use some of his powers. You get to see Zhang and Daji interact, and there should have been more to it because the way that it plays out just it leaves an empty feeling where you're just like, what was the point? And I wish there was more. It could have been really interesting, and it just wasn't developed enough. And that's kind of unfortunate because it's one of the better storylines within the books. And also the timeline was weird to me because it was a lot farther in the past, and it was just like 10 years
Everyone's just walking around being like, you see that man over there? That's the Guardian. And Rin's like, who's this man? And like,
and how did people forget about him?
No, The students didn't know who he was. How was that not everything they were ever talking about? It was
and that's
20
the thing where
years
it's like
ago.
they have the pictures up of them everywhere because she was able to ask the question, like, why does the Dragon Emperor look so much like Visra and the House of Yin? And it's like, oh yeah, because he's related to them. Like that's Neja's uncle.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they look like. And then we're like, but we don't know what Daji or we don't know what Zhang looks like. And also it was only like 10 years ago that this happened. So wouldn't we remember what the 3 people who literally demolished an island of people look like?
I guess technically we have to know that it was only 20 years ago because Alton did come from Spear.
Yeah, it would be 20.
I feel like she needed to have written down this timeline because, like, I get it. Alton was the last Spear person ever born, and technically, we're supposed to think that the Dragon Emperor is the one who signed off on the like explosions of Spear and eradicating the entire Spearly people. It just feels weird to have Zhang be the guardian that
yeah
and no one know about it, like, unless it's like Beauty and the Beast rules where they're like Daji put a spell on everyone to make them forget who he was.
Well, like, and the way that, and maybe this is also just the way that she kind of writes it seems like it's more of a past experience than it is farther in the past than it actually was, because I guess if you're saying it like that and we're like looking at Alton's age, yeah, okay, that does make sense. But when you are reading it, it seems like it's, oh, this was a long time ago that this happened. And like a bunch of the events that they talk about with the trifecta, you're like, oh, that was so long ago. But it's like, no, that was not that long ago. Also, no one recognizes Zhang. Seriously.
Not a single one of you is going to tell Rin. Who's going to tell her? Like someone tell her. I don't care.
I'm positive that we would be able to remember people that did really significant things like that 20 years later. Like, come on.
It just, that was a really bold thing to do.
This is not just like somebody walks in, orders a cup of tea and leaves and then shows up 20 years later and is like, hey, remember my order from last time? Like, no, I don't remember your order, but I do remember if you blow up an entire island.
There hasn't been a guardian around here for 20 years. Like,
oh my gosh.
And the fact that like I understand, like technically I understand on a surface level that like there are people who are coming in where people were like, I hate that guy. And she's like, why do people hate you so much? And Zhang's like, I don't remember. But like students should remember. Their parents are part of the aristocracy. How are none of the parents being like, you know, that guy, that's the guardian?
About him? Like
that makes
the way
no
that, like,
sense.
Katai knows everything and was like, him and Neja should have known about this, especially Neja, like growing up being related to one of the trifecta. You would think that their family would like thrive on passing on information about a family member of theirs that was running the country and was part of this shaman trio, you know, like that would be important to them, and he would know a lot about the trifecta, but that it doesn't make sense to have him just like, nobody knows who he is.
I don't understand.
Hannah, what did you think about the 2 new shamans that we got, or 3, I should say?
Oh, I mean, I liked them. They felt like they were plot witches, but that's not their fault.
Also, just the way that they were conveniently like the people that it was like, oh, this is the boy that she found that was buried alive, and then this is the girl that she found and helped her and her sister. Like, it could have been other people. It doesn't always have to be like there's lots of people are significant. Like, we can have other people come into this, well, again, especially if they're going to just play small roles.
Again, we needed a 4th book because I felt like Kuang had an opportunity to like have Rin, like in her descent to badness, have it be like Rin starts thinking she is the chosen one of the gods because the Phoenix is always talking to her and she feels like she's more and more powerful, and she starts like abusing Katai a little bit more because she starts thinking she has a right to, because this is all necessary, and Katai lets her because he loves her and he can't say no to her. And then you could have these 3 kids come in where 2 of them are people she saved, and that can help in the like, it is technically coincidental because these are just 2 people who suffered through trauma, so they decided to sign up. but she could see it as, well, these gods gave me these children. This means
like it was predestined.
Yes. And you can have her almost like in her own like descent to madness, do something that's similar, where at the end of the book she realizes like she's taken things out of context like Hesperians do, and she's letting the phoenix prey on those like deepest, darkest secrets of herself. That could have happened. It didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't.
And I will say that the like training of the shamans and stuff was some of the better written parts of the book. I think Kuang does write kind of a buildup to this type of situation better than she can tie it up at the end. But because I think that that's kind of like what was amazing to me about the Poppy War, and what everyone seemed to find so much like love for, was this buildup of a person who comes from nothing and works so hard to go to this fancy school and to prove themselves, and ends up in this army, in this war. That was some of the best writing that we got out of this series. And we get glimpses of that when Rin is actually trying to be a teacher to these new shamans, but we almost needed more of it, or just don't include it, you know?
Right.
At this point it was like, okay, if we're going to progress the way that we are, let's just leave that out and come up with another plot witch to figure this out. Like, we don't need to do this.
It was just really an interesting choice, and it wasn't as effective as I would have liked it to be. If we're like, this is finally Rin getting everything she wanted. She wanted an army of shaman, and all of a sudden she's like perfectly reasonable with Katai of being like, well, we only need 3. That's not Rin. Like, Rin has been begging for more shaman. So like, why isn't she asking for more? Why isn't she like burning people out left and right? Like, a huge part of these sections is her telling these kids like, yeah, you'll have to die. It's just what you have to do. And there's just not enough resolution there to like make it worth it.
Right. Yeah. Another section where I was like, we could have left that out and stretch out some of those other things a little more to make things make sense. But it is what it is. There's Venka.
I adore Venka. I don't know why.
You do really like Venka a lot.
Like, really,
she's one of your favorites. I really like Venka. I wouldn't say she's one of my favorites, but I do appreciate the character, and I think that this character has had the best character growth of any in the series, and it's made the most sense throughout the 3 books.
I think that's probably why she's my favorite of like everyone that we've talked about so far, because I do think Venka has the deepest flaws that get brought up on the page. She is challenged the most, and like, she listens to the challenge and then she's like, yeah, I don't care. Like, she at least gets like, she's kind of the character that everyone feels the most comfortable with being like, hey, you're reacting really poorly to this. And she's like, okay. Like, and it's at least an active choice, where I feel like so many of these other characters are reactive. It's nice to see a character just be active, participating, and like, I made this choice. I decided to come with you guys because I learned the flaws of the system I was a part of. And like, yes, it's because of my own trauma, but like, that is enough for me to be here. And I do think that that's a very effective character, and she's very unique to the plot in that way, where like Katai slowly just became this bastion of goodness, where we stopped having any questions about like his motivations, his everything. But like, when Rin has a moment of like, are you a spy? I was like, she is the character who technically is the most reasonable to be a spy based on her motivations, because we haven't questioned anyone else's.
Right.
And I almost like, I wished at that moment, like Katai admitted like, no, I've been talking to Nezha. I'm trying to garner peace.
I was like, thinking it was going to go that direction for a minute, when I was like, it's not Venka, it's Katai.
Yeah. And it just,
especially since they'd had previous interactions.
And it didn't like, it's just a very weird, it's a very weird moment. So I really like Venka because she seems the most active. I like her and Rin's relationship because it's very interesting to see two people, especially women, kind of not always like each other, but through their shared experience come to like trust one another deeply, because we only see them in war. I don't think like if both of them had survived to the end of this, they would have often seen each other as anything else other than like coworkers who
Sure.
respect one another. But there is like a deep affection that comes through that, which I think is realistic. And I think that like we don't see that in women too often, unfortunately.
Mhm.
We see women have to be best friends. And like
Right.
I really appreciated
And
that,
that's
like,
not realistic.
it's not, especially for these two characters. Like
Mhm.
they were very animist towards one another. They kind of just got thrown together through like shared trauma and shared experiences,
Sure.
but they actively choose to be around one another. And like, because of that, they actively understand that they can trust one another inherently because they may
Mhm.
not have liked one another, but now they're together.
Right.
And I appreciated that in the second book where we see them interact a lot more, where
Mhm.
Rin has like the most sympathy for Venka. Like Rin is not a very sympathetic person, and she is horrified by a lot of Venka's actions, but she always like, it's like, I get it. Like this woman did a lot and suffered through a lot. And like, yeah, she's going to be
I
highly
wouldn't say she has
reactive.
the most sympathy because I think the other characters have a lot of sympathy for her and her situation, but the way that they treat her is different because they lean into like wanting to coddle her
Mhm.
because of what happened to her, and she wants to still be treated like a human, not like an infant again, and is
Right.
like, no, I had bad things happen to me. It does not make me incapable. And Rin is willing to treat her that way.
Right. No, I didn't. I miss, like, we talked past each other for a second. I
Oh,
don't
sorry.
think that, no, you're totally fine. And it helps me clarify. I don't think Rin is the one who's the most sympathetic towards Venka. I think out of the people Rin has sympathy for,
Mhm.
Venka is high on her list. Rin
Sure.
is pretty emotionalist and pretty much like, people suffer, you get over it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's something about Venka that like when Rin sees her react to things, she's like, I get it. And she just like is
Mhm.
able to move on. In a lot of characters where Rin would typically question them or like push it back in their face,
Mhm.
for some reason there is the sympathy towards Venka. And it might be like Rin has inherent colorism, as we've seen. So maybe
Sure.
it's like this pretty woman who she sees suffer. Do I wish like Kuang had commented on that a little bit more?
Mhm.
Like, yes, but I do think it's interesting to see Rin have this person who she feels something for that isn't like best friendship like Katai
Sure.
or toxic love like Neja. Like I
Neja,
think
who she has the
just
most sympathy for.
yes. And I think she just cares a lot about Venka in a very unique
Mhm.
way that I find very interesting in this book. And the way Venka, like, Rin shows up and she's like, hey, you just were with this army for months without us? And she's like, yeah, what else was I supposed to do? You know,
Right.
like, she's like, let me
What are
tell
my
you
other
everything that's
options?
going on. What are my other options? I'm here. I'll be a spy for you guys because that's what you need me to do. Like,
Mhm.
she's the biggest, maybe that's the thing. Venka,
She
out
gives
of
me
all of
definitely
them,
like Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine vibes.
yes, Venka out of all of them is the actual soldier. Like,
Yeah.
everyone else is kind of a mess, but Venka is doing the most. She's like, oh, you need me
Mhm.
to be a spy? I'll infiltrate. I come back. Like, oh God, they were trying to get me fired. I couldn't find a job,
Mhm.
so I had to come back. I was at the end of my rope. That was all I was useful
Right.
for. And like, that's what she wants to be. She wants to be a soldier. That's everyone's trying to coddle her. And she's like, I'm a soldier. Just let me do what I do best.
Right.
And so maybe that's why I like her the most, is like that's what they were trained to do. And it's interesting to
Mhm.
see a character do that.
Do it.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well said. So a character that was like in the beginning of this book quite a bit, and then we don't get much of him beyond that is Suji.
Yeah.
What do you think of him?
I'm trying to I he was the character where you and I were both like, we've seen him before.
Yeah. My thing was with this character, I really liked that it was, but the problem was it was too late. I did like though that it was a situation where Rin was able to question herself and some of the training that she received and realize there's not just one right way to do things. And
Mhm.
just because somebody is taking a different path or did not come from a fancy school or finish at a fancy school doesn't mean that their way of doing things isn't smart or going
Mhm.
to be effective. And I think that it was nice to see some of those things in Suji, that he was able to garner respect and that he was really a, an effective general for his people.
Yeah.
And was he also a very problematic person? Yes.
Mhm.
He did a lot of really bad things, but he also came from a similar type of upbringing as Rin, very poor, and ended up working really hard to go to this school and
Mhm.
decided to leave because he was like, you know what, I've got a place that I need to be, I need to help, and I can't be here. I need to be fighting for my people. And so that's what he did. And I think it's interesting how Rin kind of was like, you didn't go to college, and it's like, or not college, you didn't go to school, but he was like, look, I was there. I had other places, other things to do. I had more responsibility. I couldn't just be in school. My people needed me. And was this character brought in too late? Yes.
Yes.
Way too late. We needed this character in the last book to kind of counter some of what this high and mightiness that Rin gets, where she's like, I'm like the best there is because I'm the only poor person that's ever had to work against anything in the world.
I'm the only poor person.
That's kind of how she is through a lot of it, though,
know.
where she, like, even when she has those interactions with Kasegi, where she's like, oh, I didn't realize that you actually had problems too.
Also,
like,
what happened to Kasegi? What happened to Kasegi? Did he die? Did they kill him?
He wrote those letters, remember? And
then
like,
he did nothing out. Like, we never know.
I don't remember my handwriting because I don't think you've ever seen it.
They have me captured. They're gonna maybe kill me. I don't know.
I think we'll just assume that was Neja.
Oh, really?
I assumed it
was Kasegi. I assumed they did like capture him and keep him like locked up and make him write these letters. But I was like, what happened after that?
We'll never know. He's gone. Totally gone.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just like, Kasegi literally just, they were like, hey, remember that he exists? He doesn't anymore.
He's gone.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. Rin, I mean, her biggest thing is like, Rin is the type of person who thinks the best way to fight like social constructs and this like classist divide that they're in is to become a part of it and then try to break it from within, where Suji was like, you don't have to do that. Like, we have to respect other people and where they're coming from. And Rin's like, that's brand new information. Like,
that is wild. I can't believe it.
I didn't know that was an option. Like, it's very much like, Rin, come on, girl. Like, how do you not know that? And I think Sushi was definitely necessary, but he should have been a foil to Rin a long time ago.
Yeah.
In the third book, we just didn't care enough about him. And then
even give us more mentions or something.
Yeah. And then he immediately stabs her in the back. Like, it would have been interesting to see him as like a potential love interest to fight against Neja, when it's just like, oh, we almost had sex one time. Like, okay.
Which I kind of almost would have preferred if he would have become kind of like a lover, and then they had this kind of like, okay, well, this is an awkward situation because we're sleeping together and we're also like fighting alongside one another and have very different viewpoints, you know, like that would have been very interesting. Hannah, we just need another book. We need another book.
We needed another book. That's kind of like the ending of this, is just like, we needed another Kuang book of this. We needed a better resolution.
But you know who she does get to kiss in this book? Viceroy. Reading that, I was like,
oh, it's just so gross.
No, do not kiss him, Rin.
I don't understand why that was a part of this. Why?
Because she never got to kiss Neja, so that was like her only chance. I don't know why. Ew. Why kiss him? I know this happens all the time when you're watching a movie and there's like an evil character that will like kiss you, like, you know, it happens all the time. You know what I mean? Because I'm even thinking, doesn't this happen in Aladdin? Like the old 1992 animated version, doesn't Jafar kiss someone? Like,
well, Jasmine kisses Jafar.
Okay, well, it's a manipulation on Jasmine's part then.
Yes, but
still, it's like icky. Like, ew, don't do that. But this happens all the time, so it's not a new thing, but it still feels icky every time something like that happens.
Every single stick-in time. I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand why she did that. She didn't need to.
Stop with the creepy, like, you're foiled.
Stop with like,
kisses, hey, ew.
I want to kiss my daddy, like, because Viceroy is daddy. Like, it's so gross. I don't understand, and I hate it so much.
Bothersome.
I'm glad we didn't have to see Viceroy a lot in this book, that he just died.
Yeah,
good on that. That was the right choice. Yeah.
There's other generals that are brought up and everything, and other like warlords, but we get so little of them, and I don't think that there's like anything of note besides that they like stab her in the back and that she kills some of them because she's like, you're done. I don't know that there's anything to note on those
No.
people. So I think that just kind of leaves us with Neja and Rin.
I hate
I'm
Neja so much.
remembering right.
I just don't get Neja's point at this point. Like he just reinforces like a lot of the stuff about the Hesperians. He's off the page, but he's on every page. Like he's apparently growing to where he understands the Hesperians are dangerous. And like he's accepted the dragon because pretty much the Hesperians forced him to at this point, where they're like, you have to because you're the only shaman we can look at. But we don't get to see any of his personal growth with like understanding that that's what happened to Rin that might have like helped her with her hatred towards them. Like Neja doesn't have to personally grow at all. He gets all the benefits with none of the detriments about personal growth. Like he doesn't have to question his own fallibility at all. He just becomes all powerful. He becomes like, even though people are mocking him, like the fact that in this book, the worst thing that happens to Neja is his people want to mock him and he still gets being put in power is just wild to me. Like, I don't get it.
So going back to like the history of this, I'm looking at the blog post that everything you need to know before you read the Poppy War again. Neja's character is supposed to resemble this son of the person who fought in the Poppy Wars. So Neja's character is supposed to be similar to Chiang Ching-kuo. I'm sorry, I pronounced that horribly. And he was the person who oversaw the opening of Taiwan's political sphere, according to this blog piece. And this is a well-written blog post. I will link it again. So I don't know much about the history of this, but I'm guessing that if she based it off of these characters, and Rin was based off of Mao Zedong.
Okay.
And she was a very controversial character, or a very controversial person in history, because she was like pretty ruthless. It sounds like she's been quoted saying, when there's not enough to eat, people starve to death, it's better to let half the people die so that others can eat their fill. And so I don't know much about these people in real life, but I'm kind of guessing that the reason that like Neja lived and we couldn't have this like be more convenient is because she was trying to base it more on history.
Right.
Which kind of made for some of these things to not make sense the way that they were written.
Right.
Because when you add in some of the fantasy elements and some of the fiction and take away the history of it, the realness of it all, it becomes a little more, wait, what's happening? How did we get here again? It's hard to mix the two of them and come out with the same conclusion. So with Neja, I really just think that like a lot of the character growth and stuff that we don't get to see is frustrating, and his ending is frustrating and annoying too, because we have dealt with such an annoying little brat of a person.
Right.
And then he gets to be the person that takes over, and it's inexplicable as a reader, but when you're looking at her basing this on history, you're like, okay, I guess that's who does it if that's who he's based on. But it's still odd. Well,
and maybe that's our thing, is like we're not appreciating how much this is like a historical retelling.
Yeah. And we're not very well versed in this history either. I've read one blog post, so it's not a lot of background.
So understand where we're coming at our limits, but I do think like it will be helpful to look into this more, and that's like something I will take on as well off podcast, to like read a little bit more about the history. But even reading like the perfunctity which like the person who is supposed to be like the offshoot of Rin, like the way they treated people, it is interesting to have this as a character and try to like kind of backtrack into like what made that person so callous.
Sure.
But then I wish there had been more leading up to that then.
Right. I think Rin for you and I, we just look at this like strictly from this is a fiction fantasy book, it's very difficult to put the pieces together for these two characters where they end up. And it's like you said, we need more buildup if that's what, or we needed more to figure out why certain motivations were the way that they were. Yeah.
Well, and this is like, I mean, I get it. Kuang is a very smart person. She wrote this when she was very young, but there is a sense of like, sometimes when you want to write historical retellings,
you think people have the information?
Yes. Or not even just that, but sometimes like with historical retellings, people can get a little like, oh, this is what needs to happen at the end of it, but they want to have like fun when they're getting there. And if you have too much fun, it's a little bit too hard to like figure out where you started, you know, where you're starting and where you're ending. Like,
especially with something like this, where it's a fantasy and there's so many extra things in here, like you said, to make it fun, but it gets a little too much. And then it's hard to figure out where we're going.
Yeah.
So yeah, the plotting is really important.
So I do think she could have like maybe outlined it a little bit better to get to where she was by the third book. Cause it felt like the first couple of books, like it's more about the history of the Poppy Wars that she was following, which is great. Sure. But then when you get to the third book, it's supposed to be how these two people in leadership came to be.
Yes.
And we lost that thread a little bit along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to them as characters, like more discussion on them as they were in the Burning God. What did you think about Nej's character?
I mean, I just didn't really feel for him in this book at all. Like,
we don't see him that much until like the third part.
Yeah,
but
it just I don't know.
Rin has tons of love and sympathy for him. The times when she's like, "Oh, we were in love," or the way that I loved him, I won't be, when they sing about me, they won't sing about him. It's like, really? Okay. What love story are you seeing? I don't know.
It did feel like the love stories in both their heads, and they're just like equally delusional people.
They just kind of have a crush. Like,
yeah. Well, and I do think that there is like something to be said about like a loss of innocence when you have a crush, where like these are two naive people when it comes to romantic entanglements. Like they do not have enough there to understand. So there is a little bit of naivety on both sides. And at least it's on both sides. Cause I can see where like two people who never really had anything other than a school crush could like make a big thing out of nothing, or like be like, we're so in love with each other. And it's like the second you two kiss and try to make an actual relationship, it would implode. And you would realize that you actually don't like each other at all. You just like the image of what the other person does for you.
Right.
But I don't know if there's a ton to say about Nesha. Like his ending.
The way that the dragon was presented, then quickly taken away. What the world. The way that he decided to flee. What the world, that didn't make sense. Why would you flee? You still had the upper hand. Even Rin was questioning this, and then Katai was just like, don't question it, we won. Like, okay,
how had they won? I still don't understand. Like,
they didn't win. And then that whole peace treaty was a mess of a situation, because it was not a peace offering at all. There was no kind of negotiations to be made. It was all just like, basically the only way that they'll respect any of us is if you guys die, and they probably still won't respect me, but I don't know that. And
the girl who lived come to die. That's pretty much what the negotiation was.
I have to get Voldemort in.
I don't know why I suddenly thought of that, but it felt like the perfect thing when you were like, that negotiation was a negotiation. I'm like, oh, it's like that one scene.
Yeah, funny. An awkward hug. Draco.
Draco. The boy who lived come to die. Yeah. Uh, what do you think about Rin?
I have so many mixed feelings on Rin, but I still like the character. I can't give up on her. I can't. But this book, she starts to fall apart for me. And I almost wish that it wasn't a descent into madness as much. I keep saying that because that's what it feels like, is a
I
descent
think
into
that was
madness.
what it was supposed to be. I don't know if it was effective at that, but
It
I
wasn't
think that's
super
what it was supposed to
effective,
be. Yeah.
but that's kind of the feeling you get as a reader. And
Mhm.
I kind of wish that it was not that, and Rin kind of kept her sureness that she had throughout the other books,
Yeah.
and just came to the conclusion that her dying was the only way to move forward, rather than the way that she came to the conclusion this route after she had to, kill people that were really close to her. I don't
She just
know.
wish she had a little bit more agency. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like all of her agency got taken away. And like, maybe that's the problem, is like, we do know it feels like by the end of it, it is supposed to be like her descent into madness. We keep saying that for a reason.
Mhm.
But typically when you have that, there is still some form of agency in that, where you think you're in control, even though it's like the whole like people, you're supposed to write from like a person who like in a book is crazy, quote unquote,
Mhm.
isn't supposed to know that they're crazy. That's the
Mhm.
entire purpose of it. It feels reasonable in your mind, but it feels like Rin doesn't want to share it with anyone, not because like she thinks she's in control of the situation, but because she's like so scared she isn't in control of the situation. And that
Mhm.
just, it feels diametrically opposed to what we're supposed to be
Right.
seeing in her. So I still love her. You and I are huge Rin apologists. We admit that from like
Mhm.
the start. Like, we feel a lot for this character, but parts of it just seemed a little bit messy on this end of things.
Sure. I also wish that this is like, I get it that this is based on history, so obviously there's not going to be that many women characters, but
Mm-hmm.
if there could have been, that would have been great, because the interactions between Rin and all of these men get frustrating, and
Yeah.
it's the relationships that she has with Venka and Daji, I think, are a lot more interesting and have a little more depth to them, and make us question things a little more than some of these relationships between like literally like the same man over and over and over, just with different names, where we have just another mentor, another guy who has a different point of view than her. And it's like, why does she always have to constantly question herself against different men?
It
I
does
don't
feel
know.
a little bit reductive that literally every man who's older than Rin is like daddy for her. Like, she puts
Mm-hmm.
them in such a position where it's like she loved him like a father. That keeps being repeated
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. And I do think something about Rin that wasn't looked at enough is her own inherent sexism and
Yeah.
racism, because she definitely has it.
Yep.
And she doesn't question it very often, because it almost feels like she's like, well, I'm part of the oppressed group, so I can't have
Mm-hmm.
internalized racism or sexism because I'm a woman
Mm-hmm.
and I am from the South. And it's like, no, you can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird that like, it's also weird that all of these people besides Sushi, which is why it's like he should have come in earlier because he would have been a foil. All of these people are people who are from the North,
Yeah.
and are often men. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even Daji, they're like, we talk about like intersectionality is important when it's looking at
Mm-hmm.
topics like these, but like, it's pretty pointed that Daji and Venka are both like aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And so Rin still has value in them. And Rin does not interact with like people who are like what she sees as ugly. She
Mm-hmm.
only interacts with beautiful people. She
Mm-hmm.
only interacts with people in power. And every man she sees who's older than her, she tries to make like a pseudo like father to her.
Oh yeah.
And there's no question about like, hey, Rin, that's pretty toxic. And there's no one to question that. So it kind of just
Mm-hmm.
remains unresolved, and something you have to think about as you're reading it on the page in the theme.
Right.
And I wonder how many people are doing that, because so many people have such a harsh reaction to Rin where I'm like, I don't know if you guys are asking these questions about like, why is Rin actually, it comes back to the whole, like, is your criticism like a criticism of what's going on the page and the deeper issues, or is it just you think Rin is kind of a callous person? Because like that's not all there is.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think Rin is so complicated, and the book would have really been better off being longer, having some different characters, some more characters, which is hard to do, and it's kind of a shoulda, coulda, woulda at this point. But I think where it sits is that we both, in this book, at least me, I just kind of feel like I'm holding on to what we initially knew about Rin and giving her a lot of benefit of the doubt for the situation that she was in, and kind of leaning hard into that while still recognizing that there are a lot of problematic things that she deals with, and really a lot of like self worth issues and a lot of inflated egos. So it's really tricky.
I know this is a really tricky ending to the novel. Like, it feels unresolved. And again, we like love Babel. She was racing to get to Babel, and I think
she was babbling all throughout here. You could pick it up in the conversations all throughout, that she was having with Rin, was having with Katai, some of them with Suji. Like Kuang was ready to write Babel. She was already having these ideas that were starting to come through in this book.
And in Babel, it feels a little bit like better.
Babel is a long book,
yes,
but it feels complete in a way that this book does not feel complete. The ideas are there, but they're not stretched out enough, or I shouldn't say stretched out. They're not worked upon enough to give us that resolution that we get in Babel.
It feels like she was itching at something here and she just couldn't reach the scratch. And in Babel, she got it perfectly. Like, I really loved that book so much. And I think it is the book that we were kind of hoping the Burning God would be for us. And maybe it's like, okay, well, we know that like in book 2, Rin has this moment, and then we go to Babel. And that's like the resolution.
And series are hard. Series are really hard to continue to keep up the momentum you have. We know this just from reading Wheel of Time, that there were definite ups and downs in those novels, that we would love some and then we would not like others. And it's just difficult to try and either keep your momentum going and as a writer stay interested in what you're doing, or to come to some kind of like ending that makes sense with your characters.
Right. I agree. This was an amazing series overall. I give the series a 4.75. I think it loses 0.25 because of the Burning God for me. It was just such a letdown, but the other 2 books were so amazing.
The first 2 books I really enjoyed, and we'll talk about them more on our next episode when we're going to talk about the series overall. But this book, to me, I think is a 3 out of 5. And I liked it, but I really wish there was a lot of things that were handled differently, and that it was just 4 books instead.
Agreed.
So,
wow. Join in next week. Well, what else is there left to say? We have complicated feelings.
Go watch a soap opera.
It's really hard to do, but once you're in, I promise. So next week is our wrap up of the Poppy Wars. It'll be listener questions. So come in hot and heavy with your questions to us about our thoughts on this book series, any thoughts on the themes, any reflections on like what you feel we've brought to this discussion that you haven't thought about before. I would love to hear from other people who have experienced the Poppy War and have certain aspects where they're like, where they're like, oh my gosh, you guys pointed this out and it's made me rethink the whole thing. I would love to hear something like that.
Or I would love to hear somebody like call us out and be like, I looked at this totally differently, and I think you guys need to look at it from this point of view. Would love those as well.
I would like we also have kind of like our defenses of Rin that we love so much, but I would love to hear some thoughtful things about people who don't like Rin, and why, or like I really liked Venka. If you want to challenge me on that, challenge me on that, because I think that that's helpful. Sure. If you guys saw the trifectas, like you enjoyed their ending, we would be very interested in that. So just reach out to us with anything about this series. We've enjoyed it immensely talking through it. We can't wait to do that. Make sure you're picking up the book for Indie Mission, as we will be covering the plot very soon. And we will be announcing the next series in the next episode, won't we?
In our wrap up.
So hopefully you guys I'll have a couple of hints online so you can guess.
And hopefully you guys have all got your Jim Butcher novels ready to go.
Sure, because Laura was definitely going to sign off on that.
It's like 400 books. Oh.
That would be, it's our next Everest, I guess.
Yep.
But yeah, so join us next week. Please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Rating, review, and subscribing is an excellent way to get people to join in on all these wonderful conversations, especially with the next series, which we're very excited to discuss. Can't wait to do it. And we will also do a little bit of housekeeping because we won't be starting season 3 until the new year. It's just something Laura and I decided on timing. So we're going to fill you in next week as we wrap up on this series on what you should expect from us throughout the rest of the year. We're really excited for some of the things coming out. It's a little bit new for us, and we're going to be doing some fun things. So we hope you guys join us and follow us at Our Pod. That's OWWR Pod. And thanks for coming in today. Bye.
Bye.